Welcome, everybody. I have with me an old friend of mine who I have played with for numerous years, and I got to see him the other day. Bert Dalton, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your talent, by the way, because I love working with you.
Well, back at you, Michael, and I appreciate you doing this. I've seen some of these interviews you've done, and I think it's just the coolest thing.
So let's talk a little bit about you, because I've known you for all these years, and in doing my research, I learned quite a bit about you. So now you're from the Chicago area. Exactly where in Chicago are you from? Because it's a big, gigantic city.
It is, and that's a bit of literary license. I'm actually from one of the suburbs called Villa Park.
Okay.
It's about 20 miles straight west of the Loop. When you're in Chicago, you can't say you're from Chicago if you're from Villa Park, but in Albuquerque, I can get away with it because nobody knows where Villa Park is. But Villa Park is a really nice suburb. We had elm trees everywhere when I was growing up. We had 5 in our front yard, and Villa Park's claim to fame is that's where the Ovaltine factory was located.
Oh,
and
really?
Legend had it that there was only the one in Villa Park and the one in Switzerland. And when the wind was from the east on a given day, you could smell that malt. It was nice.
Is that kind of like our cereal factory down off of Alameda?
Yes. Yep.
You can smell General Mills cereal factory if the wind is blowing the right way from wherever you are in Albuquerque. I love it. So what school did you graduate from? Villa Park. What high school was in the area?
It was a very large high school called Willowbrook High School, and it was fairly new at the time. Now it's fairly old, of course, but it was actually a really good school. There were like over 3,000 students there. We had a good music program, and I was involved with the school newspaper. They had a printing press there, so there was lots of cool activities.
Okay, so when did you start playing piano? I mean, obviously you've been playing it for decades, but how long? When did you start playing piano?
Well, I started lessons when I was 8. I remember as a kid, I'd go up to the piano in Sunday school and play chords. And I just thought, wow, it's so neat. You can play more than one note at the same time. But no, I started lessons when I was 8 and continued for several years, and then really got into it more in high school.
So that was my next question. So in high school, I assume you played in the jazz band. Did you play any other instruments, or was it strictly piano?
No, just strictly piano. In the beginning, when I was taking lessons, my brother was actually playing accordion. He was a fairly decent accordion player. My dad played as well. I never, recently I got one, and I'm a closet accordion player. I'm terrible, but it's fun. But my first gig was with the accordion band. There were 17 accordions and me, but I actually had a very cool teacher who taught me how to play a bass note and a chord and accompany. So that was really where my ear training started, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Okay, so so I take it did you ever accompany the choirs or anything like that in high school, or were you just strictly jazz band? What did you do in high school? Did you play?
Yeah, we had, of course, you couldn't call it a jazz band in those days. It was a stage band.
Yeah.
But some of the guys outside of school, we had kind of a wacky band. Herb Alpert was very big in the day, so some of the horn players put together. We had like a Herb Alpert knockoff band, and we did a lot of street parties, and people loved it because it was very popular music.
Okay.
My brother had graduated to the bass, so that was actually the first time we got to play together. He was playing bass, I was playing piano, so we had fun with that.
Okay, and so now from high school, you went to Northern Illinois University. Where is Northern Illinois University?
Northern is, it's in DeKalb, which is about 60 miles west. And the reason I chose that school, I'll tell you the story. I had recently gotten my driver's license, and I saw and I didn't really know much about jazz. I had heard of Ramsey Lewis and kind of dug what he was doing, and that led me to Oscar Peterson. But I saw this advertisement in the paper for the Midwest Intercollegiate Jazz Band Festival at Elmhurst College. Elmhurst is the next town over, which is where Downbeat magazine is located.
Right.
And I've heard that this jazz festival continues to this day.
Mhm.
I had no idea what to expect. So I walked in there and sat down on these hard wooden benches in the chapel and proceeded to listen to this parade of these incredible large Midwestern university jazz ensembles going head to head and competing. We're talking the University of Illinois band, Indiana under David Baker, some bands from Wisconsin. And the one that caught my ear was the Northern Illinois University band directed by Ron Modell. He had recently taken that post over. He was principal trumpet with the Dallas Symphony and then wound up with this teaching gig. And I thought, well, that would be cool. Long story short, I picked that school, auditioned, and I was fortunate enough to get in my freshman year. So really learned a lot playing in that jazz band. And I love big band music. It's really fun.
Oh, I agree. After Northern Illinois University, what brought you to Albuquerque, or what brought you to New Mexico? Why Albuquerque? Why New Mexico?
Well, it's sort of a long and winding road, but in a nutshell, after I left Northern Illinois, I was just a gigging musician. I thought, I'm going to go out and be this great jazz musician. But in order to make a living in those days, I was playing left-hand bass and keyboard, working with a drummer in a parade of lounge singers. If you ever saw the Fabulous Baker Boys, where they're auditioning all of the that was us. That was totally us. Working hotel lounges on Mannheim Road outside of O'Hare Airport. And of course, in those days, the gig was either from 7 till 1 or from 9 to 3, 5 nights a week. That was what
9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Oh, yeah. That would suck.
Yeah, the union would get you for 30 hours no matter what, so that was, but that was, I didn't know any better.
Right.
But anyway, from there, I met my first musical partner, this great drummer from Australia, Neville Turner. And we started working together. And he said, hey, you want to travel? I said, yeah, that sounds good. So we started as a trio at a little restaurant in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, to which we added a wonderful vocalist, Elaine Hamilton. And that was the group we took to New Zealand and Australia, traveled around quite a bit. Okay. And we'll get back to some of those stories later. But later on, years later, after that group gradually disbanded, it was January, and the last place I wanted to go was Chicago. So we had been coming out to New Mexico, playing Santa Fe, Taos, Albuquerque, El Paso. In fact, our bass player called us the Rio Grande Valley Band for a while. But wound up in Santa Fe thinking, well, maybe I could get a gig here. And that was the late 80s. I've been gigging in New Mexico ever since. It's a great place to play music.
Oh, okay. So music brought you here, and music is what kept you here. Yes. Nice. For 25 years now, you have been the music director for the National Dance Institute of New Mexico. I just want to make sure I got that correct. And Absolutely. you also co-founded the jazz education program at the New Mexico School for the Arts. Can you tell me about these two programs? Because I know you've won numerous awards for both of them. So tell me about these programs that you've been involved with for all these years.
Okay, we have to separate them because they're two different.
They're two separate. Yeah, I know they're two separate entities. But so talk to me about the National Dance Institute.
All right, we'll start with NDI. Well, in the mid '90s, I was living in Santa Fe and cobbling together a living with arranging and lead sheets and recording and gigging and you name it. And I got a call from a guy who said, "Hey, do you want to play a dance class in a public school?" I said, what do I do? You'll know what to do. So, which of course I didn't. I showed up and it was terrible. I had no idea. But NDI is really an incredible program. It was founded in '94 by Catherine Oppenheimer and Jacques Demoise. And we go into the elementary schools, work with 4th grade kids who've never taken a dance class or a step, and it's just fun, it's athletic, and it's really all about teaching life values. But as Catherine put it, she said, that's what we teach, but we just happen to use the very seductive tools of music and dance. So every class has a teacher and a pianist. So I got in way early, became music director. And when I left, we have 16 pianists, 4 music directors. The program is statewide. We're working with around this year, I think 8,500 kids. So yeah, it's a really big deal. My job as music director not only was to recruit and train the musicians, but also we do these big shows at the end of the school year with 500 dancers on stage and a 12-piece band. And the music cues come like this. I tell the band NDI stands for next dance immediately. So in a 1 hour show, typically we'd have 32, 33 music cues, and it would just go from one to the other.
So wait, so are you still the music director? Are you still involved?
I retired at the end of the school year in May, so I am like 3 months into retirement, enjoying it thoroughly. I still keep in touch with my colleagues and, egg them on a little bit. And I substitute once in a while, play some classes, and I still enjoy it. It's fun playing the music. It's fun working with the children, and I'm enjoying not having to solve any problems.
So how long were you the director? How long were you involved? Well, first off, how long were you involved total amount of years?
Well, I played my first dance class in '96. I became the music director in '98. So I'm just rounding it off to 25 years as music director.
Wow. That's really amazing.
Really, really a great program. A lot of fun. I really enjoy hard work, but I really enjoyed it.
Okay. So now let's talk about the jazz education program for the New Mexico School for the Arts. Tell me about that program.
Well, New Mexico School for the Arts is it's a charter high school. It is part of the public schools. They do the public school side as well as the arts side. So it attracts talented kids from all over the state. And again, Catherine Oppenheimer was, one of the movers and shakers that got this whole thing going. When they first started, they had a strong string program. It was very classically oriented. I had played a gig with John Trinacosta down in Silver City, and on the long drive back, we were talking about this wonderful art school, and the subject of jazz came up. It's like, well, why don't they have any jazz there at all? Because in my opinion, even a classical musician, if they have some exposure to jazz and gain that confidence of being able to improvise, even on a basic level, that it increases their confidence, their composure as a classical musician. Mm-hmm. So we met with Cindy Montoya, who I knew because her daughter had been through NDI, and we were on a first name basis. And John and I sat down with her and basically pled our case that there should be some jazz here. Why don't you do something about it? She says, well, why don't you guys start a program? So we started the jazz ensemble that would meet twice a week. John would take the Thursday rehearsal, I would take the Monday rehearsal, and we had a wacky assortment of instruments. So it was definitely an arranging gig for me, and we would get everybody to improvise. At the height of it, we had our reed section, we had 2 clarinets, 2 saxophones, and a bassoon. But it occurred to me that, well, we could modify that, have the bassoon play the baritone part, and we could actually have a saxophone section. So we were doing Count Basie charts with this wacky mismatch of instruments. The kids absolutely loved it.
Oh, I bet it sounded great too.
It did. At the beginning, there was the chair of the music department was very traditionally oriented, and he basically just tolerated us. But then there was a change in the music chair. This wonderful guy, Kurt Isaacson, came in, and he saw what was going on. He said, the kids are engaged. I walk into your rehearsal, everybody's paying attention and reading music. That's a good thing. So the jazz ensemble became the main large ensemble at NMSA. And the last year we were there, they were the ones that opened the gala concert at Art Spring. The curtain went up, and here's the jazz band. And they said, we don't want any stinking music on the stage. They had memorized all of their music, and we were just like a couple of proud papas. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome. So now, are you still involved with you said I'll just see if I get the acronym right, NMSA? Yeah. Are you still involved with the NMS?
I am not. The program is in the most capable hands of John Rangel, who is just doing a marvelous job with that program. And they are so fortunate to have him and continuing to this day.
Interesting that you were involved with the start of these two programs and you've passed it on to capable hands, but you kind of pushed your way away from some of that stuff. So does that mean you're doing more freelance musician kind of stuff now? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm doing the things that I was doing all along, playing in various bands, playing gigs, private parties, that sort of thing. Not so much touring these days, but, more local stuff. There's lots going on. I had the good fortune of, subbing for Steve Figueroa at the AJO rehearsal the other day where you and I were talking, and that was great fun. So, yeah, things like that. Yeah, a lot of gigs, private parties. It's good stuff.
Okay, so have you always been, I want to use the term because I don't think by director of the Dance Institute or the School for the Arts, I don't think that counts. Have you always been a freelance musician specifically?
Well, yeah, most of the time I've been involved in an ensemble, having a performing ensemble of my own. There was the Chicago Jazz Exchange. We had our Latin jazz group, Yoboso, more recently the Brazil Project, various trios. So that's really where, my main focus has been. I'm probably more freelancing these days than before.
Right, but I mean, you said that when you were younger, you had this band that you were touring the world with. You toured through New Zealand. You went through Australia, I think is what I read. You toured all over the United States. So for the most part, minus the music director part, but for the most part, you've been a freelance musician your whole life, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It's interesting because I listen to a lot of stories about people who are freelance musicians and how hard you have to really work hard to get the gigs. The gigs are there. You just have to find them. You have to be creative to find the opportunities. And in a sense, you found the opportunities by being part of the Dance Institute and by starting the program for the School of the Arts. But as a freelance musician, it's a lot of work, isn't it?
It really is. Some years ago, I had the wonderful fortune of recording with John Clayton and Jeff Hamilton. And my reasoning behind that was all of the recordings I had done to that point, I was a member of an ensemble. And I wanted to have something out there, a trio recording with my name on it, with some great musicians that I greatly admired. And anyway, luck would have it, we were able to put that together. And on a break in the recording, I was, speaking to John Clayton, who he should be Secretary of State. He is so diplomatic. He really should. And I said, well, I'm really glad that you guys are willing to do this. I told him that story, just, wanted to try to get into the scene a little bit and have some recognizable names. And he said, no, he says, you have to make your own scene. He said, we have to make our own scene. This is John Clayton talking. He says, no, you don't get on the scene. You make something happen, which is exactly what you were saying.
Right. And that's interesting the way you put that, because, yeah, you network, you have to find the opportunities to play. The opportunities are out there. You just have to look for them. So It's interesting. Now, you have led some very memorable groups here in New Mexico. As you mentioned, you had the Chicago Jazz Exchange, you had Yoboso, you had the Bert Dalton Trio, obviously. You even performed with your brothers in the Dalton Brothers Trio project. You've done the Brazil project. Did I leave any out? I mean, that's quite a few names or a few projects to your name.
That's as far as bands, that's pretty much it.
So let's talk about, what was the name of the band that you toured the world with, that you went to New Zealand and you toured throughout the continental United States and Hawaii and Australia? What was the name of that band? Did we have a name?
Yeah. Chicago Jazz Exchange. Well, the touring was divided between different groups. Chicago Jazz Exchange, we did a lot of work in the Midwest, East Coast, Southwest here, which was my first trip to Santa Fe, Albuquerque. We played at Danby's restaurant on Coors, if anybody remembers that.
I do.
Yeah. And we played opposite Laney McDonald, the big storm from Chicago. Those were great days. With that, we took that group to New Zealand and Australia. Then later on with Yoboso, that's where we did Alaska and around Mexico. We were there with other groups. I've been to Hawaii with a group called Viva Jazz from Arizona. So yeah, it's been various things, but yeah, Chicago Jazz Exchange, that was truly the maiden voyage, and that was quite an adventure.
Oh, I bet it was. That would have been great. So let's talk about Yoboso.
Yes.
Because in 1996, Yoboso won the BET, which is Black Entertainment Television for people who aren't aware of it. You won the BET Jazz Discovery winner for Best Instrumental Group. That was a hell of an honor. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the concept for the group, my buddy Ricky Malachi from El Paso, and I had met him years ago back in the Chicago Jazz Exchange days. He's a wonderful drummer, and we hit it off musically. He was like, sometime we got to work together. So we put together basically a miniature salsa band. So we had vocals, we had the horn parts, we were singing in Spanish, we had conga player, that whole thing. So that group, of course, people looked at us like we were crazy when we first started. What the heck are these guys doing? But little by little, the group caught on. We caught the attention of Chris Purrington at KNME. He was doing a program where he wanted to feature two Latin groups in this particular episode of Colores.
Oh, okay.
And for one reason, I can't remember the reason, but one of the groups was not able to do it at the last minute. He called me and he said, "Would you guys like to participate?" And I said, "Heck yeah." So we went into the studio and he did, this guy had like 3 cameras, but he would have us play over and over again and move these cameras around. So when he edited this thing, it looked like there were 150 different camera angles. It was astounding. Anyway, and as part of it, we said, "Hey, could you edit that into just a couple music videos for us?" He said, "Absolutely." So it was one of those that we submitted to BET. And it's a good band, but the video is so great that I think that was a factor as well in us being chosen to do that. Okay. They flew us out to Washington, D.C. and performed in their studio there. It was really great. We had a lot of fun, and it was a terrific honor and a great boost for the band to receive that award.
Goodness me. Yeah, I bet it was, because that is a high honor. To be chosen like that, and then to have them want to go out to Washington to record like that, that's amazing. Well, congratulations, because that's so is there any variation of Yoboso still around, still performing, or have you thought about trying to get the group back together?
Well, I still keep in close touch with the guys. Of course, Milo Jaramillo was our second bass player, and he and I work together all the time. Ricky's still in El Paso. We've been having conversations lately about, we got to play together again. And Gary Cardilli, our conga player, is in Kansas City. We keep in touch, and if I had something to offer him, he'd be here in a second. So who knows? We love each other as musical brothers, and it would be fun to do that again. So we'll see.
Okay. So I want to talk about your discography, because you have a really large discography. You have recorded on so many albums. But one of the ones that sticks out, and by a ton of albums, you've been a pianist, you've been an arranger, you've produced albums. I think the last count, when I was looking online and I had to do some research, I think I saw 45 different projects that you were involved with. And that to me shows you what kind of musician, or shows me what kind of musician you are. And I have listened to some of your stuff, and I can still get some of your stuff on Spotify. So the one I want to talk to you about is the one that sticks out in my brain, is the one called the Shamrock and the Feather.
Yeah.
So this is one that you wrote as an accompaniment to a book that your wife wrote. Did I get that right?
It was always her dream to write a novel, and she came up with this incredible idea. In fact,
Oh, there's the novel.
shameless plug. And there's a paragraph on the back that best describes the theme of the book. Travel across the Southwest and explore the remote vastness of Canyon de Chelly, relive ancient Druid ceremonies and fierce Roman battles, experience the people and haunting beauty of Ireland, all destined to ignite the theater of your mind. I mean, this is the scope. It's a complicated story, but there's a Native American healing man who has a mysterious past. There's a Celtic bull, which goes back to the Druids. There's Roman battles. It's a marvelous story, just incredible. And while Dory was working on it, I was puttering around in the studio, and she says, "I got a great idea." I said, I've learned to listen when my wife has a great idea. She says, "You need to do a recording that goes with this book." I said, "Well, most guys, the girlfriend might ask them to write a song, but this one wants like a full-blown production." So, and I said, "Well, let me think about it." And I got thinking, well, we've got Native American elements, we've got Celtic elements, and I started playing around with some sequences, like taking a rhythm that felt sort of Native American and adding some like Irish elements in it. And I thought, there is some common ground in these musics. So anyway, so that was the takeoff point. So the book comes with what we call a visionary soundtrack.
Yeah.
So,
I'll be absolutely honest with you. I looked to see if anybody had ever done anything like that before.
Well,
I found nothing.
People thought we were crazy. Her publisher thought we were crazy, but it was well received. And people say, "Well, what do you like? You push a button and go to this particular place in the recording." It's like, no, think of it as if the book was already a movie, and this would be the soundtrack. Right. This would be the music that accompanies. So each piece like relates to a particular point in the story, but you can listen to the music, then read the book. You can do it the other way around. It doesn't have to be in a particular sequence, but and it's all New Mexico artists that are on there. Catherine McGill sang on it. Ronald Roybal is a Native American flute player. We had a Native American drummer. I found a guy that actually played the uilleann pipe and got him in the studio, but then the studio smelled like dead goats for about 2 weeks after that. Yeah. We're talking about doing the ebook, and we'd love to do like the audiobook at some point too, and with the music. And the coda to the story is, after that came out, we had the opportunity to go to Allen, Texas, and do a program with their symphony. So I took the music, created an orchestral suite for that. So we were able to actually perform that live with a full orchestra, and it was thrilling.
The reviews on that were absolutely amazing. They were just like so over the top about how well it turned out, and the music and the feelings, and I mean the adjectives that were used to describe it were absolutely amazing. I went and researched that, and that was what I was about to ask you. So you answered my next question. Is you got to perform that live? That must have been. Did you conduct it, or was it you just kind of sat and listened to it?
No. Well, no, I performed, but they had their own conductor who, curiously, his name is Chris Zeros, who curiously was a violist in the Dallas Symphony when my old college jazz band director Ron Modell was principal trumpet. So we had that connection.
You had the connection. I am looking forward to listening to it. It just sounds so visionary, and I know it's a term that's used loosely nowadays. But when you did this, It was visionary because it's not something, I mean, come on now, you go on the web and you show me any other book that has a soundtrack. That's not happening. I couldn't find it anywhere. And this is why I had to ask you, because I was so amazed that you would come up with these ideas. This is extremely unique.
The story and the book and the concept itself is so unique. I mean, the idea of finding similarities between Native American culture and Celtic culture, and the more we got into it, it's like, you know, there's some parallels here. We spent 10 days in this little fishing village in Ireland when she was writing the book, to try to, you know, get the feel and the smell of the place. And it's such a fabulous story. You know, trying to bring these Druid ceremonies, how do we bring that to life? And a Roman battle, what does that sound like? I actually took a tape recorder to an NDI rehearsal and had the kids march and recorded marching feet, and then slowed it down and got a lower pitch so I could get the sound of a marching Roman army. It was fun.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Oh, I can't wait to hear this. I can't wait to read it. I mean, I'm a big book fan, so I'm looking forward to this.
Okay.
So let's talk about something that I think I would be wrong not to mention this. In 2019, you were awarded the New Mexico Music Commission's Platinum Award. Now, that is one of our highest honors here in New Mexico for musicians. Congratulations. That's a heck of an honor.
It really is. And that came out of left field. I mean, there's so many more deserving people, but it was just really.
Don't sell yourself short, Bert. Please don't sell yourself short. Think about all the things that you did. I get it. I mean, I understand that because I watched the interview, and I understand that it has a lot to do with you being the director of the Dance Institute, and I do understand that. But even as a musician, acknowledging all the good things that you have done, I just think that's amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I really am deeply honored. I really appreciated that award.
All right. So I've got time for one last question, and I've already warned everybody about this. Okay. Strangest gig, funniest story. Give me an anecdote, because musicians have the best anecdotes.
Wow. Well, there's a lot of them. My wife is bugging me to write some of these down. It's just things that happen, you know?
Yeah.
So we'll go back to the first Chicago Jazz Exchange trip to New Zealand. This is 1983, and we went all over the country. I have to preface this by saying that at the time, and I assume it's still this way, New Zealand is a well-integrated country between the Maori, the Polynesian culture, and the folks of European descent, which they call Pakeha. I mean, lots of places have Maori names. It's like everybody gets along, or at least that was the impression that we had. And the Maoris trace their ancestry to which canoe of the 7 canoes their ancestors came to New Zealand from their ancestral homeland. So,
okay.
And because of that, they're a very close-knit community, and everybody is everybody's cousin. Hey, cousin, you know. So I have to preface this story. So here we are, the Chicago Jazz Exchange, which consists of an African-American singer, an Australian drummer, born in Cairo, traveling on a British passport, which led to interesting stories when we had a bomb scare, a Maori guitar player, a Lithuanian bass player, and me of English, Irish, German, Dutch descent, playing Brazilian music in a Chinese restaurant in a Scottish city in New Zealand.
Oh my goodness, so this is the preface. Oh my goodness.
This is the preface. We were playing this Chinese restaurant in Dunedin, owned by this wonderful Chinese gentleman named Eddie Chin, and just the most welcoming, warmest personality. So one day on break, we were sitting there. There was this black basketball player from New Jersey, a guy named Charlie, was there. Now, New Zealanders are great at rugby. They're great at other sports. Basketball, they love it. They're not really good at it. So a lot of basketball players, at least at the time, would go down there in the off season and play and coach. And so anyway, Charlie was down there, and he was just so happy to run into some Americans, you know? So we were sitting there talking to Charlie, and having a great time. And Eddie Chin comes by, and we said, Eddie, we want you to meet our friend Charlie. He's from America. Oh, and he goes, oh, good to meet you. He says, plenty of your cousins play at Eddie Chin restaurant. And Charlie goes, what? He says, no, Eddie, no, plenty of your cousins. Come to office, I'll show you. So we all go into the office, and Eddie's got pictures of all of the bands that were playing in his restaurant, kept pictures. And he starts pointing to all of the black bands that played there. And he says, see, Charlie, plenty of your cousins play here at Eddie Chin restaurant. And Charlie gets it, and he says, no, man, those aren't cousins. He says, those are brothers. Eddie lit up. He says, brothers. He says, even closer.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
You couldn't write that line.
Oh, no, you can't make the stories I have heard. You can't make this stuff up. The stories I have heard. Oh, trust me. When I say I have heard some good ones, I have heard some good ones. That one, I like that. That is awesome. That's awesome.
My favorite road story.
I love it. Well, we are running out of time. I want to thank Bert for being here in New Mexico, for playing, for doing all the wonderful things that you have done. All the awards that you have won are well deserved. And ladies and gentlemen, we will catch you next time.